so desperate that your soul is so downtrodden, you're such moral and physical decomposition and possibly self-inflicted injury as you are, so that you feel that joining it is just as good as anything else if they line you up with the right drugs, I suppose, or whatever the other incentive is. Take something off your record, get you in touch with some type of resource that'll help you in your condition, whatever it is. Or they'll just make up stories to incentivize the indignation of people who in society are given selective and possibly very bullshit reviews of me and said, hey, here's a national security letter, he's under supervision as a potentially violent or seditious individual. Or you just make up anything, I guess. I'm never going to get to see it and contest it. Or charge anyone with defamation of character if I'll never get to know about it and what's in it. Yeah, because, that's how it works. And you went along with it. So your arrogant butts are facing the same judgment. It doesn't get any better because you might be raising a family or have a profession or demonstrate adult-like mental functioning in some various capacity. That doesn't protect you from the guilt. That makes it worse. It's your arrogance that denies that. So, you want to know who I voted for? Didn't vote for Hillary. And I didn't vote for Trump. I voted for Mount Vesuvius. If you don't get that, that would just be fitting. And if you think my vote doesn't count, ha ha ha. Good. But the choices you made, even if there aren't eternal consequences to a soul that will endure them past the finite duration of the body, even if that weren't the case, that just shows that you have a lower set of standards for what the quality of life should be during your YOLO. So you want to live like moral doofuses, basically. That's the situation which is found pervasive in society right now, not merely because of the programs I'm talking about and the type of diminishment of character and really, frankly, mental functioning generally and intellect that has to go with that to make it possible, rationalizable, pseudo-defensible by those culpable morons who are involved in it, but it's because of all the lies being spread about anyone that influences the control narrative in the mainstream media, as well as the degradation of mores and values and common sense and a sense of respectability for virtue and for intelligence, instead of their being treated treated cynically as somehow arrogant pretenses to value which they don't have. That going on is sign enough of where things are going. And you want to talk about the potential for harm, there's a whole hell of a lot of it, isn't there? There are a lot of countries who don't need you to conduct counterintelligence operations against them for them to hate you. They just don't like you because you're not one of them. That's real. But it just turns out that some of them were aggravated by intelligence operations conducted against them by, guess what? The people that are the progenitors of this sick, perverse, large-scale Milgram's experiment crap that you're conducting. Because guess what? They're using it for that purpose too. The same corporations are behind the development of the scientific authoritarian regimes in all countries, and in fact, they are using their expertises to turn this into a psychotronically augmented socially Orwellian, dictatorial, surveillance, behavioral modification panopticon until you are going to be, as the subject class, degraded into troglodytes. And they're already succeeding in doing it while weaponizing you as cell phone-driven meat drones, basically. I'm just describing what I see. You want me to tell you a lie and kid myself? Not happening. And the consequences of it, as I have said, are well-deserved and well-defined. You cannot have the lip service that you pay to the truths about morality and justice and injustice, and then simultaneously just enjoy a world oblivious to the consequences of ignoring what those virtues and those values require and demand, because the consequences of a failure to do that is, if you have a soul, the destruction of it, and if you don't, well, you don't matter anyway, frankly, by definition. So if you do, you're destroying it, or it is destroyed, and if you don't, well, you're in the state that the former will be in. You're what the Calvinists might call the vessels of wrath. In other words, you were doomed from the beginning by God to be destroyed as soulless material objects. Well, I like to say for people like that is there's no sympathy to convey. But if you happen to have had a soul and betrayed it for this conduct, how can you expect to escape hell? You can't. There you go. Enjoy your trip there, because it's going to be an exponentially accelerated and therefore forceful and enduringly painful one. That's where your soul goes. That's what happens. That's the thing you ought to be better afraid of. And the wrongness of what you've done, if you had even conscious enough to appreciate it, would before God be the cause of your recognition that is also what you ought better to be ashamed of. Instead, you prefer to conform to soulless, amoral tyrants and fools, and join in or look the other way, while those who won't are systematically tortured by your insidious subversive programs. That's what's going on. That's the bottom line. And the fraud which is being conducted to sustain it is all demonstrable. And the motive that I give is the one attested to by experts in the subject of ponerology, sociology, psychology, religion, philosophy, who had their heads on straight, and that can be demonstrated. Your opinion about that's irrelevant to me. I've done the research. Your conduct is actionable in a very severe way at law, regardless. What you're doing is hideously illegal and immoral and unethical. The whole gamut. It's downright unnatural, unless you subscribe to the idea that your nature are exactly those other things. Immoral, unethical, unconscionable, inherently at odds with good law and order. I mean, you're just ridiculous. You made fraud your actual norm. How is that not carrying the mark of the beast? It's in your conduct, it's in your mentality, your hand and your head. There you go, off with you. So don't go around pontificating to me about what you think public spaces are and what they're for, and how you think society ought to act, and how you think people ought to act, and what you think of my personality, and what you think of my conversations with other people, or what you think of me and how I dress, well, either for good or for ill. I do not give a rat's ass